Here we come, blue and white, and we're looking good. You'll be in for a fight, and we fight pretty good. Getting goals is our job, and we get goals good. Looking good, we are Carlisle United.
Carlisle United, the team that's on the ball. Carlisle United, the team for one and all. You're looking good, and we're with you all the way. You'll hear us singing every time you play.
When will I see you again? Hello everyone and welcome to the Brunton Bugle, a podcast focusing on the trials and tribulations of Carlisle United Football Club. From Kevin Hurst to Carl Hawley and Jeff Thorpe to Jim Tomley, we've got it covered. This is episode 9 and we're going to be looking ahead to this weekend's game against Scunthorpe United and discussing the latest developments with fans at games, or lack of fans at games as it will be. For this episode I'm joined by my co-host Dan McLennan. Dan, how's it going?
Well, it was going all right until you mentioned Jim Tolby and brought back some mid-80s nightmares.
Sorry about that. You know what? Those names I put together for the start of the thing today. Well, two of them, Hurst and Hawley, I think are ex-Scunthorpe, aren't they?
Yeah.
Jeff Thorpe scored a famous goal at Scunthorpe, and then I was in a rush to get it together. I just needed to find a player over tea, and then I thought, why not drop the levels down a little bit? Three all right players, and then let's drop it in.
Yeah. Our older listeners will recall his certain contributions in the season we got relegated from the Championship, I think it was.
Yeah,
my first season, actually.
Yeah, I'm sure I've actually seen that goal at some point in the past, but people try to find it on YouTube and it's just nowhere to be seen.
I never want to see it ever again, having seen it in the flesh. So.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine. But yeah. Okay, well, let's get stuck into the main part of the show. First up, we'll have a general roundup of some of the news that's happened over the last week or so. So, first up, Dan, we're going to discuss the big talking point in the EFL right now, and that's obviously, of course, fans at games. Both me and you were obviously at the game at the weekend, one of the test events where 1,000 fans were allowed. Really enjoyed it, really good day out, and then we just got the bad news on Monday morning, didn't we, that fans aren't going to be allowed again now.
Yeah, it's something that's been taken away out the football authority's hands, hasn't it? You know, it really is a big stop on proceedings, and I think most of the clubs are sort of looking for guidance from the EFL, the FA, who in turn are looking for guidance from government. It's certainly put a huge dampener on things, especially after the success of our trial event at the weekend. Yeah,
you say success there, and there's no doubt that it was a success. We both went. Neither of us felt unsafe. We spoke to other people from a social distance, we should of course say, if you listen to the episode we put out the other day. And everyone was fine, and everyone said, this is great. And there was space, and no one was saying, we need to get it full again, and everyone cramped in. Everyone's saying, we can comfortably get back to levels of at least 3,000, and there'll still be plenty of space. I mean, the East Stand, there was huge spaces at the sides. The Warwick Road end, there was huge spaces either side of the goal. And the same with the paddock at the ends. There was loads of space, wasn't there?
Yeah, I think obviously we've mentioned before that we've got the advantage in our capacity. I know it was 17,300 officially last season. When there was talk of 25-30%, we worked out that even at that sort of level we could be looking at between 4,000 and 6,000, which is more than enough for what we've had in recent years. Like I said, I was the only person I was in the Warwick Road end, I was the only person in my block. Yeah. The block in front there was one person, the block behind there was 3 people, so there was plenty of space. But, with the government saying all trials are stopping, we're not even talking about proper games, we're talking about trials here, so it's, it could be, are we going to see football in the flesh this year again before the new year comes?
It's that seems to be the concern. The suggestion I've seen, I can't remember, it was another chairman of another football club was saying it, that the end of March was when we look at potentially the earliest we'll get to games, which is clubs are not going to survive that. That's the brutal, the brutal way things are going to be. It's just there needs to be some sort of package from the government if they're going to insist on this. That's the way it is.
It's been interesting reading a lot of the comments from the National League clubs, because obviously they've withheld the start to their season because they were planning on tying it in with October.
Fans
and it's there's several clubs already said without paying fans we will not complete the season, we will go bust. And there's only a few have said that. A lot more will be thinking it. And the same will apply to plenty of clubs in Leagues 1 and 2. I mean, you look at the clubs.
The Southend we played on the weekend, for example. Look
at the clubs with the smaller grounds, your Accringtons, maybe not so much Salford because of their owners, but, even like Harrogate, when they moved back to home, how are these clubs going to bring money in? It's interesting time ahead.
The National League one, there's an interesting twist to that, because obviously when they wanted to redo their playoffs, or do their playoffs to sort out the promotions at the end of last season, they had to be reclassified as elite leagues, didn't they? To allow for that. And that's actually, in a roundabout way, screwed them over this season, because they're elite. Unlike the other non-leagues, they're not allowed fans back.
Yeah, was it we were saying yesterday on WhatsApp, was it York City were the one who really pushed, because obviously with their new ground they wanted to go up. Ironically, they didn't win in the playoffs, and they can't start the season with any fans now, so that's worked out well for them. But no, it's it also puts clubs at a quandary, because Carlisle have obviously just been sorting out season ticket payments. What are they going to do? Are they going to continue taking the payments, refund on a match-by-match basis? Do they put it on hold? I'm sure we'll get some sort of statement from the club. It'll probably happen after we record this, which is usually the way with our luck. But we sort of, fans need to know, because I certainly don't think October and November, and once you get through, through those months, you're then thinking, well, if we're not going to open in October, November, there's no chance of Christmas games. So, I mean, 6 months I think is maybe a bit much. I would suggest New Year would possibly be...
Well, you can hope that this, because obviously the government have launched this track and trace app today, haven't they? And you'd hope that maybe... Yeah. I mean, this is the thing that frustrates people, is that we're seeing cinemas are reopening, we're seeing churches reopening, we're seeing like indoor places reopening for people to go. But outdoor football grounds, where there's plenty of space to social distance, where there's good track and trace measures in place, that's the bit I think that really annoys clubs and fans. They look at that and think, well, we've put all this effort in to do all we can, and because you haven't sorted your mess out, we're in a situation where we're having to stop fans coming to games because of what you said. So it's a tough one, isn't it?
I think basically, like I said, the clubs are playing a waiting game from their bosses, who in turn are, I know the Department of Cultures and Sport, etc., are obviously having a lot of meetings at the moment, and I would like to think in the next couple of weeks we'll get some sort of clarity and some sort of plan for it. But if worst case scenario, if it was the full 6 months, it's going to be an incredible blow to football in general, isn't it? And
definitely.
It's going to be carnage.
Well, obviously, we're going to have to be relying on watching games on the iFollow. But the interesting development on that this week, isn't there? The Colchester chairman's comments about that, explaining how the money is fit, because we haven't been clear on this. I mean, last season, I think it was something like £6.66 we got, and then the rest was VAT. That seems to have gone up to £8 now, hasn't it?
Yeah.
But the twist is that the weights being split now with home and away clubs is a bit different, isn't it?
Yeah, it was. He was basically saying it was meant, at the weekend. It was Colchester Bolton, and obviously, not under normal circumstance, Bolton would probably sell out their allocation for Colchester, and obviously Colchester would have a good payday for that game. As it was, Bolton. How many fans was it again? It said in the article bought it.
Right. I'll have a quick look at this, because they've said here that there was, I think it's something like 2,700 passes roundabout for the game against Bolton that Colchester sold. Now, Colchester themselves only sold 452 passes. They keep all the revenue from them. Bolton, on their website, sold 2,252 passes, of which Colchester only get the revenue from the first 500. So Bolton made more money off the streams from that game
being the away team
than Colchester did. This slaps me of basically the big clubs that during the summer said, hang on a second, these clubs are benefiting from our fans paying for the streams. We want a bigger cut of it. But that would be the same with the game if fans attended it, wouldn't it? So
yeah.
It's one of those things. It's I don't know. I mean,
I think we'll see more of these complaints happen as the more games that are streamed, the more bigger away followings where it happens, the smaller clubs will start to kick up a fuss about it. And it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah, well, the figures here basically say that Colchester said in normal times we would have expected about 54,000 in home gate receipts from that fixture, but we received just shy of 8,000, whereas Bolton would have expected about £600, which is 5% commission that they pay them, but they've actually received 14 grand.
Yeah,
so twice as much. It's just not fair. And I know Bolton probably are desperate for the money as much as anyone, because I imagine they've got quite a big wage bill to be paying right now. But it's one of those things. You'd hope maybe a few fans of these bigger clubs might take pity and pay for the I follow things on the home clubs thing, but I suspect not. Probably they only really care how their club does. But,
yeah, once you know that the money goes to your club, you're not really going to change.
But an interesting slight twist on that, though, is the fact that obviously Orient was supposed to be playing Spurs, weren't they, this week in the League Cup, and that game got postponed due to the Orient squad testing positive for COVID-19. What they've done is the Spurs fans en masse have been buying stuff from the Leyton Orient club shop to help raise money for Leyton Orient from the money they've lost from streams and things like that. And I think Orient have done this thing as well where Spurs fans could buy children's kits which would be donated to a local hospital charity or something like that. Really nice sort of thing. But I suspect you're probably not going to see that in the lower leagues in these situations. Right now,
that would probably very much be a one-off. And obviously, there is a little link between Leyton Orient and Tottenham at the moment with Harry Kane sponsoring Orient, and they've often had a few loan players from Tottenham. So
yeah, it's understandable that. But yeah, so it's going to be an interesting few months. Got to say, the club have been brilliant in terms of keeping us up to date, haven't they, Dan? In terms of what's happening,
I say, I would expect them to. Likely release a statement in the next few days with an update regarding it all.
Yeah, we hope so. So yeah, that's where we are with fans at games. Just one little bit of news left to give you, and that's just a small transfer update. Obviously, is the fact that second-year YTS goalkeeper Isaac Robertson has joined Workington Reds on a work experience basis. He'll be competing with their first-choice stopper Jim Atkinson. He actually made his debut on the opening day of the league season for Workington, a 2-2 draw at Pickering Town. Pretty good move for him, actually, Dan, isn't it? I mean, we talk about the fact that those players went to Kendal, and I know they're the same league, but Kendal generally always have a little bit poorer quality squad and don't tend to do as well as Workington, so it's good that Isaac's gone to Workington to test himself.
Yeah, I think it'll just be about getting him used to the match day experience, etc., won't it, you know?
It must be one they think highly of, though, because we've actually got 3 YTS keepers this season, which is quite an unusual thing. Normally, you have a second year and a first year, don't you? But we must have taken on 2 first years this year. And obviously, they must think to themselves, well, we need to have at least, those 2 need to be involved. And there's no point in him staying around playing kids football. Let's develop him and maybe even push him to get a place in the first team next season, get a contract, because we haven't had a YTS keeper sign a professional contract. I think it's Morecambe Bacon. I think might be the last one we had, possibly.
Yeah, probably.
Funny enough, he's at Kendal Town now, actually. So, good luck to Isaac. Hope he does well at Workington. Obviously, he's able to still train with the youth team squad, and I think playing reserve games and things like that. So
usually
he'll still get his chances. Still get his chances there. Okay, Dan. Let's now do a little quick sort of roundup of the Southend game. Actually, obviously we did discuss this in the matchday episode, but I think it'd just be nice to have a little bit of a think now we've had a chance to look at the highlights and things like that. Overall, I think looking back, we talk about how poor Southend were, and they were very poor. They were dire, but actually it's a good solid result, isn't it? Really, when you look at it.
Yeah, like we said on Saturday, it's a home win, it's a clean sheet, 3 points. We could and should have had more goals, but you know, we are a young team, we are a new team, and you know, with the fans in and having a bit of support behind them, it'll be a good experience, you know, on the ladder for them. You know, it's there can be no complaints really.
They definitely did get a lift from those fans being there, though, didn't they? You could just tell that the players just seem to enjoy it a little bit more out there than they have done in the opening few games.
Definitely, and well, as we've just been saying, it's a shame that, you know, it's looking likely to be the last time for certainly the next few weeks, if not months.
Yeah. Well, a few talking points I've picked out that we could talk about from the game. First one up, I'm moving this forward, Dan, from what I sent you before the episode, but I think Dean Furman is the big one we've got to talk about. What an impact he had on that team. He was just superb, wasn't he?
Like I said pre-match Saturday, you know, this is the one signing who we sort of look at for the old head in the middle of the park, and he should. I know we keep stressing how bad Southend were, but he showed just what he's about on Saturday, and you know, he's got a good match in the bank sort of thing, you know, after missing a game, and you know, onwards and upwards for him, and hopefully he can. And you notice Callum Guy definitely played a lot better with him beside him, didn't he?
Yeah, and I think John Mellish as well, actually, to be fair. I think all three of them looked a bit of a better sort of unit together. He gets about the pitch so quickly, he's so tenacious to the tackle, but then he's so quick to get the ball and get it moved on to someone else, isn't he? He doesn't mess about.
Yeah, and I also noticed he's quite vocal as well. You know, yeah. he was directing and shouting and encouraging, and you know, that's maybe one thing that Mike Jones wasn't the most natural at in the middle. You know, he never appeared to be the loudest of players. But no, it was all good as far as Furman concerned, which actually brings us on to the next bit where we were going to discuss John Mellish, weren't we?
Yeah, I wouldn't say we've given him a bit of stick at the start of the season, but we've been sort of, I think we're a bit on the fence, aren't we, about whether he really can do it as a midfielder. I thought he had a much better game actually on Saturday. I know there's a few people giving him stick over those two chances he had to score, but actually I've looked back at the highlights now. I mean, the first one, it's an air shot with his right foot. It's his weaker foot. Probably wasn't expecting Gimme Toure to do a Rabona cross there, was he? Yeah. I don't think. But it's one of those ones that it happens. You can get over that. The second one, yeah, probably is a better chance. But actually, looking at the highlights, McCormack was pretty much ready to tackle him. He had to take a quick snapshot. He didn't really have the time to set himself at all. So it's not quite as clear-cut a chance as was made out maybe at the time. At first, I thought he should really be hitting the tie there. But actually, having watched the highlight, it wasn't quite as easy. There were some interesting comments. I listened to Radio Cumbria on the train back after the game, and I thought Chris Lumsden made some really interesting comments actually about Mellish and how we maybe need to temper our criticism of him a little bit, because he still is learning that position. He still is only, 21, 22? So
he was 23 the other day, I think.
23, sorry.
Yeah.
I knew he was round about that age anyway. But he's still a young lad, and he's new to that position. And he's not going to be the same as Furman or Guy in that he's not going to be quite as aware in terms of when he gets the ball to be able to do a quick turn or have a quick look as he receives the ball. He's still picking that up. And then you wonder, will he pick that up straight away? Probably not. So maybe you need to focus on his strength, which is pushing forward and getting into the box and getting into those positions. It's a case of him, basically, isn't it? Learning what he's good at and what he isn't good at and trying to work on the things he isn't good at, or maybe looking how he can sort of avoid being involved in the game in that way.
Yeah, I mean, don't get us wrong. We all want him to succeed in the position. It will be a big upward learning curve. You know, the lad's played as a left-sided central defender most of his career and played quite well at National League level doing it. So it is a step up. Chris Beach thinks he can develop him there, and I think the next sort of few weeks and months will be interesting to see if he does sort of take this step and, you know, turn into the midfielder that Beach thinks he can be. He's
getting into the team ahead of Danny Devine at the moment, who's a player who's played that position for his whole career, isn't he? So, I mean, Devine's maybe a slightly different player. He probably sits a little bit deeper, maybe. But you clearly see something in him. You do see those little sparks. He was involved actually in a couple of attacks at the weekend where he won good flick-ons and he was putting himself about. But there's just a couple of times he was caught on the ball, and that's the thing he needs to work on, isn't it? His awareness of what's around him and knowing when to release the ball a little bit quicker.
Yeah. Like I said, that'll also come in game time. I know he first started playing this in a couple of bounce games, and he'd only just started trying the position when the season was curtailed in March. So it's like I say, it's very much a learning curve, and let's see what the next weeks bring for him.
Yeah, definitely. The other point I wanted to talk about, and it's something we sort of mentioned briefly on the matchday episode, but I think it's something that really is worth discussing. It's Coyote and his long throws in particular, because I watched back the highlights when I was putting together the matchday podcast and using the clips of the sound from the game just to get an idea of when incidents happen. Basically, it makes it a lot easier to sift through the recording I've made, and it really stood out to me just how much we used that weapon on the weekend, wasn't it? It was just constant. Every chance we got, we had a throw near the edge of the box, we were launching it in, and almost all of them created a chance, didn't they?
Yeah, it's one of those. I think obviously we kept using it on Saturday because they were so poor. I think against better teams we won't be able to. They'll soon cotton onto it quickly. We don't want to become over reliant on it.
Yeah, that's the
because
thing.
Once you become over reliant on it, teams who scout you will soon be onto it, and they'll work out how to, break and push on while you're sending your big men up for it. Because Hayden was coming up for every long throw, like it was a corner. McDonald, and yes, against a poor team like Southend, you can afford to do that. Against a Salford City with Ian Henderson, you can't send your two big men up with that sort of threat, waiting at the centre circle. So it's definitely a good tool to have in our armoury, but I don't think we should become over reliant on it.
Oh, definitely. It's one of those things, isn't it, that you look at the weekend, and I would say probably 90% of our decent chances have come from Coyote's long throws, or maybe corners that were picked up as a result of that. So it's one of those things we don't want to be in a situation where that is our main weapon and we totally rely on that. We want to make sure that we're creating good stuff in open play as well, don't we? That's the
and also obviously the one key thing is it takes Coyote out the box, doesn't it?
Yeah. That's the one thing, and I think Alessandro might have a long throw as well. I'm sure I've seen him take a few.
I think he did use it a couple of times towards the end of last season. Yeah. So.
But it's part of the game, isn't it? If you've got it, you should use it, but you just don't want to be in a situation where that is basically where you're creating all your chances. Because at the end of the day, we said this before, but Coyote's had a few injuries since he's been with us. So if he picks up a knock, what happens then? Because Anderton hasn't got a throw as long as that, and
we certainly don't want to become one-dimensional with it, do we?
Absolutely. But yeah, so overall, I think we're pretty happy with that game, aren't we? We're good to get the first 3 points on the board. Something to build on from there, isn't it?
Definitely.
Okay, so that's part 1 sorted, Dan, and we'll be back in a minute for part 2.
Go on! Go on!
Okay, welcome back everyone. We're into part 2 now. It's time to look ahead to this weekend's game against Scunthorpe United. Dan, let's just get straight into it. Not a bad game to follow up with after the Southend game, isn't it? Because they've not had the best starts of the season, have they, Scunthorpe?
No, they've been on a bit of a downward curve for a couple of seasons, haven't they? Nothing seems to happen for them at the moment. Looking at their fixtures so far, they got beat off Port Vale in the Cup. They lost the local derby to Lincoln in the We Won't Talk About It trophy. They drew at home to Newport, got beat away at Crawley. So no, they've not really done much so far, have they?
No, they've not been dreadful by looking, because they're not getting battered, but they're just not. Doesn't look like they're quite clicking so far. They're, you mentioned that they've been a bit of a downward spiral. They're an interesting club, aren't they? Because they've never historically been a massive club, but over the last maybe 20 years or so, they've generally bounced about between the Championship and League One, haven't they? I think they've been quite heavily subsidised by their owners. I think they've put a fair bit of money in. They've had debt sort of sitting there, not doing much. But they've never quite managed to establish themselves as a championship club.
Yeah, just on about the bad run there. I'm just looking here. They only won 2 games in the second half of last season. I think they finished the season with 2 wins in 8 and 4, 5, 6 defeats. You know, so they've been sort of on the down for a good while now, and there's obviously they've got quite a big squad, but they don't use them. I know Olamola we had last season, he's back there, but I don't think he's featured yet, has he? And no, they're just something not right at Scunthorpe, and I know that they've been trying to get a new ground again, haven't they?
Yeah,
and that seems to struggle, and just do they really need a new ground at the moment?
The thing is, obviously, they moved into Glanford Park. What was it, the early 90s, late 80s? I think it was.
Yeah.
Brand new ground, but it already looks a bit dated, doesn't it? It's kind of one of those biscuit tin ones, isn't it? But there's not really particularly great facilities there. Particularly if you go in that away end, anyone who's been in that away end at Glanford Park, the concourse bit behind the stand is just, you can barely fit 4 or 5 people in there, can you? It's tiny. Yeah. It's absolutely tiny. So I can understand maybe why they want to move. Maybe there's particularly facilities they want to put in there, improve the ground, make it more appealing for people to go. But there, as you mentioned there, Dan, not winning their opening 4 fixtures in all comps, out of the Carabao Cup by Port Vale, lost to Crawley last time out, and obviously drew at home to Newport on the opening day. Now, they've got a new manager, Neil Cox. He's a local lad, started his career at the club, making 17 appearances before joining Aston Villa. But he's also played for Watford, probably most famously, Middlesbrough and Bolton. Now, he's only managed Leek Town before now, but he's also been assistant at Notts County for a couple of years. And then he was 6 years, I think, at Wimbledon as well as assistant. He's obviously, as a local lad, going to get a bit more time from their fans, and he's going to be popular in that sense. But it's quite a tough job to come into, isn't it, for your first job?
It smacks of, he's a local lad, so he'll be a bit cheaper.
A bit cheaper and probably a fan pleaser as much as anything. That's the thing that stands out for. Dare I say it's similar to sort of giving Michael Bridges the job if he got the Carlisle job. But yeah, he's got a tough job on his hands, hasn't he? And I think we discussed it in the season preview show. That there's no particular exciting additions in their squad. The one summer signing that obviously stands out for us because he played for us last season is Ryan Loft. He started quite well there, though, wasn't he?
Yeah, 2 goals a couple of goals games already. Yeah,
and I think the one he scored in the league was an absolute belter, wasn't it? I think it was like 25 yards into the top corner. I think both me and you agreed. I think we never really saw the best of him, did we, at Carlisle? And actually, he's probably a better player than he showed.
Yeah, and obviously once Beechard came in and got the January window out of the way, it was fairly obvious that he didn't really want Loft and Olamola. We were just sort of stuck with them, weren't we? So no, he's got a chance to make his mark in the game, and he's started off well there, so fair play to him.
Yeah. Obviously the other 2 ex-Carlisle players in the squad that stand out, Alex Gilead, who I believe is their captain now, which you never would have thought of him as captain material when he was on loan, would you? It's
definitely not.
One. But and obviously Olamola, but he hasn't actually been involved in their matchday squad so far this season. His career seems to be just sort of
stalling, doesn't it?
Yeah, petering out at the moment. But stalling's probably the right word. Yeah, because we saw in those opening 10 games or so, he's got ability, hasn't he? He's a good player, but you've got to have a particular system to make him work, haven't you? That's the problem. So unlikely that Olamola will feature against us. Loft will probably start, as will Gilead, you'd imagine. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting contest, I think it's fair to say.
I think it's one of those games that you can possibly use as a marker, similar to Southend.
Yeah.
You would expect to beat Southend at home and at least get a point away there, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And I think looking at Scunthorpe's early form, the squad they've got, new manager, I would say this is a similar sort of game where you'd certainly look to win at home and at least get a point away.
Okay. Well, team news for the game. Not really had anything from the club yet, have we, on this? Because I think they're doing the press conference.
I think he's doing his press conference this morning, looking on social media.
Yeah, so Gimme Toure, possibly a doubt maybe. He came off with a strapped leg, didn't he? I think his leg was strapped off the game.
He pulled up very slightly in front of the Warwick Road and near where I was stood on Saturday. He still played on a bit, but I know when he was having his post-match curry, there was a picture with quite a heavy strapping on him. Hopefully it's just one of those that just needs a day to settle down and he's good to go again.
I love that photo of him with the curry though. He looks the happiest man alive, doesn't he, Charlie?
Yeah.
But yeah, so hopefully he'll be good to go. And it's just a sort of dead leg, as you say. Bar that, we don't think there's any new injuries from what we can gather. But as you say, it'd be typical that we'll come out after recording this and it'll turn out that there's 2 or 3 out with injuries, or there's a COVID going through the squad, God forbid.
Yeah.
Furman got through his 90 minutes though, didn't he? And did pretty well in the game. Pretty happy with that.
As long as he's got no bounce factor from that. He comes across as a sort of bloke who looks after himself, doesn't he? So.
Yeah. Brennan Dickinson obviously is the one who's still out injured, likely to be till December. Josh Dixon, we understand, is still maybe a couple of weeks away with his thigh strain after his ACL injury. So team news wise, pretty much a full squad available, isn't there? I think, as long as
I don't think we'll see much change from Saturday. The old saying, you don't change a winning team.
Yep, can imagine that. Scunthorpe United, so couldn't really find much injury news to them either. But by the looks of things, Jordan Clark, who transfer marked, is actually their captain. So maybe it's Gilead filling at the moment. He's out injured. He's been there a while, hasn't he?
He's been there 4 or 5 years now, hasn't he?
That's the only one I can see who's out injured. So it looks like they've got a full squad to pick from. Like I said, unlikely that Olamola will feature. Loft probably will start. I wonder if our friend Kenan Dunval-Turan will feature, the German striker, but possibly not. I'm not sure. But obviously, I think the danger man for them is probably Kevin Van Veen, isn't it? He's the one who seems to have...
He knows his way around, doesn't he?
Yeah, definitely. Okay, Dan, quickly, predictions for this weekend?
I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw this week.
Okay.
And I will say the goal scorer will be Callum Guy.
Oh, interesting. I'm going to go for a 2-1 win. I'm going to be the optimist here. I just think we'll have a little bit of momentum, but I think we'll still look a little bit shaky at the back. So I reckon Coyote will get one of the goals, keep his goal scoring firm going. And who are we going to go for the other? I'm going to go John Mellish. Go on. He's going to get his goal. He's finally going to get his goal, and he's going to get
a big toe poker from 25 yards and breaks the nets.
Exactly. That's what you want from him, isn't it? So that's what I'm going for. Okay, let's move on to the regular part of the show called XCFC Update. So we look a little bit around at what's going on around the football world from players who used to play for Carlisle, or managers possibly. First up,
there's only one to start with this week.
Of course there is. Dean Henderson making his debut for Manchester United. Great to see him finally put on the shirt for them for various reasons. One, it's just good for him. Good to see him continue to develop.
Let's get to the real reason.
Let's get to the real reason.
About the issue here. It's all about the money.
We'll do the Scrooge McDuck diving into his pool of pound coins, gifts, definitely for this one. It's about the money. We're not 100% exactly how much. I don't think it probably is a 7-figure fee for it being the League Cup.
The word from people out west who know him and his family, that's where this £1 million rumour originated from. And
the club have played it down though, haven't they? They've suggested it's not that much. So
the club would play it down if we got a fiver, to be fair.
It's true. That's true.
But no, and hopefully it's the first of 2 debuts, because he seems to be a solid squad pick for England now.
Yeah.
Pickford, Pope and Henderson seem to be the 3 England keepers that Southgate goes to. Funnily enough, as I talk about this just now, that showing Jordan Pickford's mistakes against Fleetwood last night on Sky Sports News.
Yeah.
And interestingly, in the next two international windows, October and November, as well as 4 Nations League games, England also have 2 friendlies.
Yeah.
And it would be zero surprise if Southgate used these 2 friendlies to give Pope and Henderson a bit of action, you know.
You got to imagine he will, yeah.
You know, obviously, again, there's talk of big money for an England debut, so it could be more money heading to the club.
And just the right time for it to be happening, really, because potentially, obviously, depending on what the government do to support clubs, going to be desperate for cash, aren't we?
Yeah, I mean, and as I've said on the message board in the last couple of days, we're probably one of the few clubs in League Two who've benefited from transfer stuff at the right time. You know, obviously, Branthwaite going to Everton, then making his debut. Rumours of promotion clauses for the Leeds United transfers of McCarran and Galloway. Now Dean Henderson making debuts, so it's all looking good, hopefully.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to a bit of transfer news from an ex-Carlisle player, and that's Jack Sowerby. He's left Fleetwood and joined Northampton Town for an undisclosed fee. Keith Curle obviously signing there. Keith Curle obviously didn't sign him for Carlisle because it was John Sheridan that did that, wasn't it, I think? Interesting one, because I'd heard some rumours that we were actually keen on bringing him back to Brunton Park in the last few weeks.
It wouldn't be a surprise if we were, but apparently I don't think the player himself liked it up here as much.
No.
Which is... Could it be because at the time it was when Sheridan was in his grump stage before he left?
Possibly,
he maybe just didn't like the atmosphere.
Because his best spell in his career has been with us by far.
Yeah.
It's a strange one, isn't it, really?
But we all think he's a League One player, in fairness, and he's got the move to League One, so... Well, don't get us wrong, we'd love to see him. He'd be perfect in our team at the moment, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
But I think he's just that little bit level above at the moment for us.
Yeah. Yeah. Next up...
for my obscure Europa League addiction, we mentioned about Danny Redmond last time and how Bastian Henry had been playing for Linfield in Europe. Funnily enough, in his last game for Linfield, Bastian Henry was substituted, and the person who came on for him was Danny Kearns, who obviously signed from... Was it West Ham he came from to us?
Peterborough, wasn't it?
Peterborough, yes. He was ex-West Ham, wasn't he?
He was, yeah.
Ex-West Ham, went to Peterborough, then came here. And it didn't happen for him here, and he disappeared back to Ireland and Irish football. And I thought it was quite ironic, just after mentioning him when recording, that a ex-Carlisle player is substituted by another ex-Carlisle player. And the last one we've got, not a direct link, but certainly his dad was.
We're stretching it here, aren't we?
Yeah, Rory Delap's son, Liam, well thought of striker, has been on Man City's bench for a couple of games, and there's actually talk that he could actually play for them tonight. Obviously, Aguero's got a bit of a knock at the moment, so they've only really got Gabriel Jesus, as they call him, and Liam Delap has been on the bench for emergencies with talk that they might actually give him a debut. He's only 17-year-old, I think, at the moment.
Yeah.
Has he turned 18 yet? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think he's in England under 19 international.
Yeah, you know, I'm sure we'll get highlights of Roddy Delap's long throws when he's.
Well, it's interesting, obviously, that he's a striker, because obviously Delap himself started out as a striker, didn't he?
Before moving to wing back. Yeah,
wing back. Yeah, so that good news for Rory and his family.
Yeah, I'm just obviously just before we started recording, I obviously had a quick flick through the transfers, and there seems to be a little lull in players moving. That will obviously crank up at the start of October when the window comes in. So.
Yeah,
you know, we'll probably have a few more players to mention in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, we'd hope so. Okay, Dan, I think that's pretty much wrapped it up for this week's episode. Thanks again for joining me. Much appreciated. So yeah, basically we're hoping to get a review episode of the Scunthorpe game out sometime next week. We might try and just tie it up with the preview game for the Barrow match, which should be an interesting one. We'll try and get some historical stuff out in that, in terms of games against Barrow in the past, maybe.
When they were a club from Lancashire,
that's the thing. It's going to be the first ever Cumbrian derby against Barrow, because
I only recognise the traditional county of Cumberland, I'm afraid.
So Kendall and Westmorland club then, in your eyes, yes. All right. So yeah, so hopefully we'll be getting that out some point next week. I am definitely going to be recording one of the special episodes with Mike this weekend. I keep promising it, but I am. I've
also started making a few notes for our Kids special, where we will be launching a little campaign when that's
Well,
once we're a bit clearer on what's happening with fans and that, we'll get cracking with our specials and hopefully get a few more out for you.
Definitely. So if you've got any comments or feedback or anything you'd like to suggest we discuss, please send them in via Twitter to @BruntonBugle or by email to bruntonbugle@gmail.com. Remember, you can subscribe to the podcast via all good podcast apps, including Acast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. Put my teeth back in. Please also give us a review, and we really appreciate the excellent feedback we've had so far. I've got no new countries to add, Dan. I've gone through. I think we did Vietnam last week, didn't we?
Yes, I think you mentioned Vietnam.
Vietnam. I think New Zealand might be a new one. I'm not sure if we've mentioned
possibly
them before.
Has them before, I think.
Possibly, but yeah. So I do know that I've heard an update from our correspondent in Norway. He's trekking in some of the woods up there, listening to the match day episode. Said he was enjoying it, hearing the crowd sounds, the occasional get rid and sort it out Anderton and stuff like that. He was very much enjoying that. But yeah, well hopefully we'll have some new countries to add next time. But yeah, that's where we are. Okay, that's it. Thanks everyone for listening, and up the Blues.
Up the Blues.